Sometimes we say that we want things to change, but a real crucial question that we should ask is how willing are we to change? I shared yesterday in the video that I had some challenges with shredding some stuff. And I spoke to you about fear and more importantly, about the power of leverage. Now, the reason this becomes super relevant today is because it sparked an idea which I felt I had to speak to you about. And that's not just the fact that we want things to change at times. And it's not just the fact that because we want things to change at times, we have to ask the hard question of how willing are we to change. But it's actually something connected to both of these ideas, but at the same time is missed with both of these ideas. And that idea is the simple fact that sometimes we have to ask the question, are we willing to shred our past in order to live out our future? Now, I don't know if you can see it today, but the backdrop is literally the shredding. And part of the reason why today I've ensured that the backdrop is the shredding is so I can literally, and let me see if I can do this. I want to see if I can take a picture of the shredding in case it doesn't show on the screen and then let you see as it is here for me being seen. Okay. So this is literally the shredded bags. Okay. All the shredding that I was concerned about recently, maybe you can say anxious about, felt uncomfortable about, and as a result, didn't really want to take the big bold step and start to shred, I guess, my history or part of my history. And again, I spoke about it more in depth yesterday, so I won't go into it in depth or in detail today. But having got all the shredding done, a few things came to mind. And the biggest thing that came to mind is in order to pursue what's ahead of you, you have to get rid of what's behind you. And the getting rid of what's behind us is not always about shredding it necessarily, but it's about giving yourself room, like literally creating capacity for there to be a newness of entry. And this is what I was realizing. As I was shredding the stuff, it just kept coming to my mind that for us to become who we're supposed to be going forward, we have to come to grips, come to pass, come to some kind of a level of settlement with who we were in the past. And I'm just noticing as I was going through the shredding that that's something that is not always obvious. It's something that's not always done by choice. It's something that sometimes we decide to do without even realize that we're actually doing it. We're actually saying goodbye to the past on a regular basis in different ways. And a lot of the time we don't know we're actually making that happen. And as I talk about this, it's making me think about a whole bunch of stuff that's happened in my history, in my past. And if it's of value, maybe I'll do a video tomorrow about how I got here and kind of like how I got here, how from my perspective, how I got here, at the age of 40, doing a video each day on YouTube as a husband with 6 children. Maybe tomorrow I'll do that video. But before going into that video in the future, like the things I can say are definitely resolute and relevant in light of this. And maybe in terms of your journey of asking yourself that question is, Samuel, like, how many times have I actually said goodbye to the past without knowing it? And in order to assist you with that journey that I would love for you to embark on, if it's of value to you, I'm going to share with you some of the times in the past that I've said goodbye to my past without even realizing that I was saying goodbye to my past. Now, the first quick, easy one is every single degree I studied. Okay, so I've studied 4 degrees. My first degree was my undergraduate degree. That was a BSc in computing and statistics. And after 3 years, you meet some great peers, but then at the end, you all kind of say cheers, right? Like you get to the end of the degree, you qualify, you get your grade, and yes, you share some real deep, heartfelt moments with the colleagues that you spent the last 3 years with. But nonetheless, at the end of that journey, your degree is done, and you say goodbye to your degree, and you say it in interesting ways. Like for me, saying goodbye to the journey of doing my first degree was not like, okay, bye uni. It was more in my mindset and in my focus, goodbye to being a student, because in my mind I was going off to become a professional. And even though I went straight from studying my first degree into studying my first master's, so I still remained a student, I was a graduate student, so I felt different. I was a graduate student, so I thought different. I was a graduate student, so I perceived myself differently. And as a result, I said goodbye without realizing at the time that I was saying goodbye to that part of my past. The first master's I studied at UCO was a MSc in statistics. Same thing, right? And now, if I fast forward to the other two degrees, I can come back to this specific first master's, because I think studying that first master's was the eye opener for me and to me, that I was saying goodbye to my past every time I'd move on. So, my third degree was my PGC in teaching secondary and A-level mathematics, and then my fourth degree was my master's in teaching, which I did part-time over, I think, 3 years before graduating that and then moving on from that. And at the time I did all of these degrees, all four of them, I never realized I was saying goodbye to my past and embracing my future as I was moving on, which is part of the reason why I think this video should be extremely helpful to you. Because if you are like me and you've never realized that, this now becomes super valuable for you, just as it's become super valuable for me, for being able to turn on the shredder of the past anytime you desire, rather than have to wait until there's some mechanistic or mechanical or material thing shredding the past or saying goodbye to your past so you can go forward. And if you're someone who's stuck where you're at, this might actually just be the solvent that releases the glue that allows you to start to walk through. So let's go deeper into it. So this second degree that I studied, my master's in statistics at the University College London, was a high pressure degree. High pressure for several reasons. High pressure because some of my lecturers in my undergraduate university advised me, or one of them specifically advised me, that he believed in me, that I could actually go and study in such a prestigious university. At the time, UCL was ranked as the seventh best university in the world. So again, that was like weight on the shoulders. And at the same time, I was someone who years before that, I'd celebrated my 18th birthday in a prison cell. So again, pressure was on. Okay. So I'm now studying at this time in this master's in statistics in the most prestigious part of London, at one of the most prestigious universities in the world. And I'm doing a fairly, what I would say, challenging subject, a master's in statistics. So there were so many layers to it, right? And I got to the end of that first academic year. I was studying my master's full time. Got to the end of that first academic year, sat my exams and failed my exams. Okay. And that hit hard. It hit hard for so many reasons. It hit hard because 4 years before that, I had committed my life to being a believer, all right, a follower of Jesus Christ. 4 years before that, I had kind of switched on and got serious. And part of my academic journey was part of me being serious. So I was very, very focused on books, reading, studying, etc. So, the learned side of me, the academic side of me was really blossoming, and it had been blossoming on a kind of like 4 or 5 year track record at the time that I failed these exams. So I made the decision, I'll pay for the exams again. I'll go back the next year and sit them again. Now, that is all a whole nother story. But the essence of the story that I want to bring out from this story is the fact that because I didn't achieve what I expected to achieve when I expected to achieve it at the end of that first year of that master's studying full time, it awakened my mind to the reality of what we might often just call failure. Okay, now it's not really failure, it's actually a lesson. But I didn't see it as a lesson at the time, because maybe I felt sorry for myself. Maybe I was in a state of confusion because I couldn't understand how someone who was serious in their relationship with Christ and at the same time was actually a real academic, like, could have such a challenge. And one of the things that I guess I won't say made it worse, but made it even more confusing at the time, was that I had applied for my PhD at the time and I was accepted with no conditions, right? So if I wasn't a son of a migrant to the UK who grew up in East London and celebrated his 18th birthday in prison and felt like he had been on the struggle bus for most of his life and financially wasn't in a position as a student to fund. I don't know if I just said that backwards. Maybe I said it backwards. But because of my story up until that point, studying at masters, I could have literally not retaken my master's exams like on paper because I was accepted into my doctoral program with no conditions. And again, what was weird is that was the very first time the doctoral program that I applied for was the very first time I was accepted into a program with no conditions. And if I had the money, I could have just funded it and done my PhD. Now, the likelihood of that would have been very unlikely because obviously my lecturers would have been lecturers that taught me on my masters, and they would have been mindful that, hold on a minute, you didn't pass your masters, why would you fund yourself to do your PhD? But nonetheless, the reality is that is the case. Like, I could have done that because I received an offer with no conditions. So that was another layer of the confusion. But the reality is, because of all of that, it helped me realize, it now today helps me realize that every one of my educational endeavors, in terms of like these formal 4 degrees I'm talking about, I would come to the close of those degrees and say goodbye to that history. I'd be shredding the past because of the high hopes and expectations and intentions of what's going to be ahead of me. And that master's in statistics, because it had an outcome at the end of that first year that I didn't expect, was the first time that there was a spanner in the work to that. So it helps me realize, every single time I did one of these degrees, that's what was happening. Now, let me go into a few other things to share this. Again, other educational endeavors, okay? Just you can wrap your head around them. When I finished primary school, when I finished secondary school, etc., etc. But I want to go into a few that are different, right? So one that comes to mind, I shared it a moment ago, is when I was sentenced, or even prior to being sentenced, when I was held on remand and sent to prison. Okay, so I was held on remand, sent to prison, probably early 17 years old. So I'm roughly 17 years old at the time, I assume. I do a number of months in prison. I literally get the opportunity to get early release. And because someone I love dearly was my co-defendant, I decided not to release or get released early. Okay, so they were not on remand, and when you're on remand, for, in case you don't know, is when you are held in prison before you're legally sentenced because you are a risk or because you're still committing crime or some other reason. So because I was held on remand, I think for 2 months prior to my sentencing, that allowed me to be able to be released at a certain date. But my co-defendant wasn't held on remand and was sentenced at the same time as myself. So what that meant was, if I got released for good behavior when I was going to be released, I would have been released, I think, a month before them, a month or 2 months before them. Now, because I'd been kind of watching the process of the early good behavior release that was taking place with other inmates or prisoners, whatever you want to call them, I realized that if I submitted my papers on a specific date, then my papers would end up being processed and I'd get released at the same date as my co-defendant. So I decided to do that. So I voluntarily, if you use that terminology, stayed in prison longer so that me and my co-defendant could be released at the same time. And that's what happened. Now, fast forward, when I was released with an ankle bracelet or a tag, a monitor, right? So that basically I was on a curfew. I had to be at home, I think 7 p.m. or 8 p.m., one of those, every single evening. It was probably 7 p.m. And that was the kind of life I was living at the time, right? So I had to do that for a certain period of time. I think it was 3 months or 6 months or something of that. It doesn't matter because I didn't get to the end of that time. Whilst being on tag with an ankle monitor, whatever you call it, I was arrested. And because I was arrested whilst being on tag, I was sent back to prison. And when I was sent back to prison, I was sent back to prison to complete the entirety of my sentence, which is what I ended up doing. And it was whilst doing the entirety of my sentence, the second time I was sent to prison, that I celebrated my 18th birthday in a prison cell. So being released from prison that second time was another kind of, well, not kind of, specifically just like the degrees I mentioned, but obviously differently because prison is a different kind of environment. It's not the same as an educational institution, even though they have their similarities. But being released from prison this second time, there was a goodbye to the past. There was a shredding of the past because, like, when I was released from prison, I want to talk about myself rather than talk about anyone else because I don't know for anyone else. But when I was released from prison, I was looking forward to being out of there. I was looking forward to being free again. I was looking forward to being able to live my life and go on and do stuff, right? Now, at the time, my intentions were probably completely wrong and bogus and erroneous. But thanks be to God for influential voices. Thanks be to God for coaches, mentors. Thanks be to God for family members who love you, including predominantly at that point, my co-defendant at the time, who, when I came out of prison the second time, basically strongly, and I use the word strongly as a understatement, but strongly encouraged me to go back to college. So I say all this to say that prison was one of my experiences where I had shrouded my past in order to embrace my future, and I had never ever realized that. It's only going through this process over these last few days of having shredding to do, going through the shredding, sharing that with you, that I started to realize that this is what has to be done. And this is why I'm sharing these layers of story with you. And I'll share one more with you just so you know exactly what I'm talking about. So you can start to position in your life where, first and foremost, you can see for yourself, oh, wow, like Samuel is saying it in his way, but I can also see it in my way. These certain times where I've had to, quote unquote, shred my past in order to embrace my future. So the first one was my educational degrees. The only reason I share that is because I've done more than three. The second one was celebrating my 18th birthday in prison. And the reason I share that is because most people haven't experienced a prison, from my knowledge anyway. And then the third one is being married to my wife. And it's exactly the same thing. Again, it's not the same in terms of the semantics or the elements, but it's the same thing in terms of this framework of making a forward-fledged decision which inadvertently shreds your history about things related to that decision. You see, being released from prison, because you're so expectant about finally being free and being able to do that one thing that you've been waiting on. It might be eating in a specific restaurant, it might be having a specific meal, it might be going to see a specific person again that you haven't seen for X amount of time, right? The passion and the interest and the desire and expectation when you finish a degree, that now I'm a professional, now I'm going to go into the quote unquote big bad world and make something of myself. And similar to the passion, the interest, the excitement, the encouragement, and the foresight of I'm about to be married or I'm going to get married and we're going to have this kind of life together going forward. You see, each of these layers are the soft, subtle way that we erode and shred our past without even knowing it. And I believe what I'm now discovering is because the shredding of the past is such an integral part to moving forward into the future, it's possible for us to purposely shred the past. And shredding the past is not about forgetting the past. Shredding the past is not about, eliminating the past. Shredding the past is not about saying the past didn't happen or it didn't occur. More so, shredding the past is coming to grips, coming to terms with where you've been in order to garner it as a foundation to the expectation that you can start to build for where you're going to go. And that's, I think, the way I'm going to have to articulate that. Because that's how I'm seeing it now. Like, I literally was shredding these documents, shredding these papers. And as I'm shredding them, I'm realizing this is gone now. This is gone now. This is the past. This is the past. I don't have to do anything that chains me to this document or that chains me to this way of life or that chains me to the things I made as decisions in the past, because this is gone. And what's interesting is we all know that about our current present position right now. We all know that I don't have to do anything in the next 10 minutes, next 1 minute, next 10 seconds, next 1 second that conforms to anything that I've ever done in the past. We all know that deep down implicitly, but we don't live our lives like that for some reason. And it was going through that process yesterday And some part of today of shredding and shredding and shredding and creating all of those bags of shredded documents and cards, there's a whole bunch of cards in there as well, that help me just realize, help me just get to that place and help me see for the first time that there is a space for shredding the past in order to steer yourself into the future. So I want to invite you, now that you have a clear understanding of what I'm talking about, to make that call and shred the past so you can steer towards the future. And specifically, I'd love for you to share in the comments below an area which maybe now you know you need to shred. Because I'm close to certain that as we're having this kind of discussion right now, an area in your life is probably coming up, it's probably bubbling up within you, it's probably bubbling up in your mind that, you know what, yeah, there's this area where I've kind of left it lingering rather than shredding it, rather than getting rid of it so that I can move forward with some healthy expectation around the things that I really desire, which are maybe connected, maybe not connected to that area in your life. You see, when I got married, I instantly, introspectively, maybe again without even knowing it, knew that I was shredding my past. My history, in any way, shape, or form, had nothing to do with the future that I was about to form. And knowing that changes everything. And maybe that's the reason why I believe I'm extremely happily and successfully married. Maybe that's the reason why I believe that although I started off maybe timid and afraid to have X amount of children, today I have 6 children. Maybe that's why I believe that I can live my life in a way that is actually connected to the expectations and hopes I have for the future, rather than being bound by the things I've seen and maybe not even wanted to have from the past. So with that being said, my prayer for you is that you expand. And as the Bible says, my deepest desire for you is that you enlarge your coast and have an expanded territory. But I understand in order to do that, one of the first things we're going to have to do is make sure we shred the past so we can steer towards the future. If you got value from this video, there's a whole bunch of stuff you can do on this platform to show the algorithm that this is valuable content and it will be valuable for other people just like you. So feel free to do that. And why not subscribe, be a part of the tribe. And with that being said, as I usually say, please remember that small keys open big doors, and I'll see you on the next one. Good day, God bless. Let's go.